Last year, I stood on this stage and talked about what happens in the child welfare system. I talked about who gets support and who loses their children. But this year, I want to go deeper. Because if we only focus on what is happening, we miss the more important question: why? Why do some families receive support while others are separated? Why are resources available after child removal, but not before? And why have we normalized this? Last year, I described termination of parental rights as a civil death penalty. It is one of the most violent acts a government can take against a family. A parent is erased from a child's birth certificate as if they never existed. Scripture tells us that children are gifts from God. We may not fully understand God's divine wisdom in placing children within families, but instead of supporting those families, we remove children and place them with strangers who often receive more support than the birth family ever did. The government attempts to permanently erase a parent from their child's life, not because they stop loving their child, but often because they lack the resources and support we never gave them. The Heart Gallery of Tampa helps find forever families for foster children waiting to be adopted. I remember hearing about a 14-year-old child who called and asked, "Did you find a family for me yet?" Think about that. A child carrying the grief and trauma of separation, calling to ask whether someone has chosen him yet. This teenager should be navigating high school, friendships, identity, and dreams for the future. Instead, he is carrying the unbearable weight of rejection, loss, and displacement. And somehow we call this child welfare. This child had a family that was separated, a family that is still likely carrying the grief, trauma, and scars of that removal. And while this child waits to be chosen, somewhere there is a family grieving that loss. Why do some families receive support while others are separated? To answer that question, we have to go back. Children are born innocent, and I have to believe that at some point in this country, a white child looked out into the cotton fields and asked, "Why are they out there while we are in the house?" And a black child looked around, saw how his family was being treated, and asked this exact same question. And neither child could be told the truth. So a story was created. They belong there. They are inferior. This is for their own good. The adults had to rationalize what they were participating in, and then those children grew up and passed those same rationalizations down to their children. But inside enslaved families, another conversation was happening. A parent might whisper to their child, "Keep your head down so they don't take you from me. Don't let them see your anger. I need you to survive this. You are not what they say you are." One child was taught to rationalize the system. Another child was taught how to survive it. This became the big lie passed down generation to generation. A lie taught around dinner tables, inside churches, inside classrooms, and reinforced through our institutions. Messages passed down by the people we trust most. White families were taught stories about superiority, danger, and control. Black families were taught survival, how to stay safe, how to navigate systems that were never built to protect them. Chattel slavery did not just exploit Black labor, it normalized the forced separation of Black families. Black mothers, fathers, and children were bought and sold for profit. Families were treated as commodities instead of human beings. And because the lie was repeated long enough, society learned to accept it as normal. We like to believe slavery is history, but the lie that sustained slavery did not disappear. It evolved into systems. What carried forward was the belief about who is fit to raise their own children and who must be controlled, monitored, or replaced. During slavery, Black families were legally separated. Today we use different language: neglect, risk, best interest of the child. But the underlying logic remains disturbingly similar. Different language, same logic. When families are struggling, we give them very little. Limited housing support, limited childcare, limited financial assistance, limited mental health support. But once a child is removed, suddenly there is an entire system funded around that separation. Foster care payments, adoption subsidies, therapeutic services, court systems, case management. We have the resources, we just choose not to give them to family before removal. We used to commodify Black bodies through labor. Now, we commodify them through systems. And our bodies continue to fuel industries, agencies, courtrooms, contracts, and professional careers that claim to help us while profiting from our instability, surveillance, and separation. The child's removal activities activate an entire network of systems: more funding, more services, more oversight, more jobs, more contracts. And many of these children eventually move from one system directly into another, from foster care to juvenile justice to prisons. The foster care system has become part of a pipeline that normalizes surveillance, separation, institutionalization, and control. And somewhere in the middle of it all is a child separated from their family. And when entire systems, industries, and careers become financially tied to family separation, we have to ask whether there is any real motivation to fundamentally change it. Because history has already shown us what happens when people profit from human suffering. Slavery was defended for generations, not simply because of ideology, but because it was economically beneficial. And when systems generate funding, contracts, careers, and power, people will fight to preserve them, even when harm is undeniable. Child welfare does not stand alone. It mirrors every other system that disproportionately harms Black families. Different doors, same outcome: surveillance, control, separation. This is not isolated dysfunction. This is by design. This is my son, and I love him deeply. But loving him forced me to confront difficult truths. The system showed up for me in ways it never showed up for his family. The hardest part of this work is not changing policy. It is unlearning the lie we inherited about which families deserve support and which families deserve separation. That work is personal. We inherited these systems, but inheritance is not obligation. Just because something was handed down to us does not mean we have to keep handing it down to our children and grandchildren. We did not create these systems, but we are responsible for what we choose to do with them now. But before we can change systems, we have to confront the stories we were taught about each other. And that starts inside of us. If children could design these systems, what would they choose? A system that invests in their parents, or one that removes them, cycles them through trauma, and places them with strangers? If we are willing to tell the truth, we can build something different. Now, what will we do? Because children are not commodities and families are not disposable. Thank you.